Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for week 2 in our Fashion Tech Accelerator hosted by PreeLine. We're really excited to be talking to you today about UX, UI, and usability testing, and how to perform those usability tests. Again, just some housekeeping on the recording, to keep your phone on mute, and to ask your questions in the box located on the right-hand side of your screen. All homework is going to be posted on the website, fashiontechaccelerator.com. Remember that the password is PreeLine, and you can find the reading for that week posted there, and then also you'll be able to find the recording of this WebEx posted there as well. Again, as we went over this last week, but PreeLine is a predictive analytics company that's connecting brands and consumers pre-season so that consumers can access trend insights before anyone else, and brands can get a better sense of what the consumer is looking to buy in season so that they can buy the inventory to align with the consumer interest. So essentially, your favorite items will be in stock more often, so it's really a win-win for everyone. So these are our speakers for today. I'll be talking about UX and UI. I'm the co-founder of PreeLine and have focused a lot of my time on the build and construct of our site, PreeLine.com, and also PreeLine Nucleus. And so we'll be going through some of the lessons learned that we've discovered through that process and some insights that we've gleaned about UX and UI. We also have Ami, Riley, and Stephen here from Campus Insight. These guys are amazing. They actually go out and perform usability tests on campus. So you guys should definitely reach out to these guys if you're interested in doing more usability tests after this week's homework. They really are super sharp and know a lot about how to glean insights about a platform through usability tests. So to start us off, we're going to go over what is UX and UI and why do they matter when you're starting a company. So UI is the user interface. That's what the person sees. Whereas UX is actually the user experience, with the X from experience. And that's really how the user is interacting with that item or feeling about that item. So UI is a lot more technical in terms of just what they see, and UX is a lot more emotional in terms of how they feel when they actually are at your platform. So an example of this, as you saw in the reading, is if I see a handbag, that would be technically the UI of the handbag. And then the UX of that experience would be how I hold the handbag when I put it over my shoulder, how I feel when I'm wearing that handbag. Do I feel like I'm fashionable? That would be the UX of that experience. So UI being what the user sees is kind of what you start off looking into when you first build a site. So I'm going to take you through our evolution of the UI interface on PreeLine as we continue to build out and change our platform. So we start here. This is a very rough wireframe. We used the same image across the board just to show that an image of an item was going to be placed there, and drew up some basic blocking so that we would know where all of our content for the site would go. From there, we continued to make iterations of that site. We started to drop in the actual pictures of the products that we are going to be posting, and we continue to make these notes. As you see, we start to come in and just make small changes to our UI on the platform, adding text in the search box, making font bigger or smaller, increasing the size between various elements on the page. Those are all UI changes that we continue to evolve as we build out the platform. Here we see the next evolution of the platform as we start to become a bit more social. This is built out in PowerPoint, very rough, to essentially just experiment with the different layouts of the platform. And then finally, you see here, this is basically our platform as it exists today. So you see actually here that we're playing around with the hover and social stats to see where we should put these social stats so that the user can see the social stats for each item while also having the experience of being able to interact with the item just visually without too much content on that page. So in terms of starting that process of building out the UI experience, the number one best way to start wireframing and start building out your UI is with pen and paper. It seems very simple, but pen and paper is, I would argue, the best way to start because you have no restraints or restrictions in terms of what you can do. You aren't restricted to using certain shapes, you aren't restricted to using certain formats, and it really kind of allows you the freedom to openly brainstorm about what you want the layout of that page to look like. Once you have that general concept, you can then use platforms like PowerPoint. I know that's probably not the best practice, but PowerPoint is very easy for moving around the various boxes. InVision is a great app too, and Marvel app. Sketch is fantastic once you have started building the site as well to make notes about various elements of the UI that you're looking to change. So that's kind of how you start the build out and the concept building of your UI for your platform. Some key things to keep in mind when building out this UI is to keep it simple. So really to make sure that your user's eyes are being drawn to the right location where you're trying to draw them to, and that it's very clear the layout of the page where all of the content is being placed. So some ways to test out your UI once you have some of these rough wireframes built. One of the best ways is to perform usability tests, which we'll be going over with the Campus Insights team. Another way is just through A/B testing. I would argue that's one of the easiest ways in the beginning to start testing out whether or not your UI changes have worked. So for example, you can A/B test your sign up button in a blue color and a red color. And surprisingly, your consumers may react better to one of those colors of your sign in button. So A/B testing could be very beneficial for that. Also conversion tracking in that way as well. So if you don't have the ability to A/B test on your platform in the beginning, you can just track conversions within a certain time frame and then make the change and see if that conversion rate has changed or bumped up. Another way that you should test mobile UI usability is Google now ranks search results based on how mobile friendly your site is. So definitely make sure just to go to their site, google.com/webmaster/tools/mobile friendly, because they will be able to show you whether or not your mobile site is actually user-friendly, and that will affect your Google search results on mobile phones. So then, essentially, UI would be the spoon, the bowl, and the cereal, and then the UX would be the experience the user has as they're eating that cereal. So the UX interaction, again, is much more emotional and has to do with how the user navigates through your site and how they feel as they start to make those navigations. So this is sort of an example of UX. Right now, we're showing the navigation of a user through our PreeLine Nucleus platform. What's not shown here is the emotion the user is feeling as they type out, "Love it," for this dress. Does that mean that they would like to ultimately purchase this dress? Does that mean they're going to share this dress with their friends? Those are some things that you want to dig into as you look into UX and building out that user experience on your platform. So the key questions you really want to make sure to answer, and that we look to answer as we've built out this UX experience for our users, for us, the key questions revolved around the social experience because we're a social platform. We knew that the users coming to our platform would be social trendsetters interested in seeing fashions before anyone else. We thought that they may be interested in connecting with people on the platform, and that was a UX experience that we tested into. We also knew that users were interested in discovering new content and being the first to discover future looks. So that was a UX experience we had to figure out, was how to easily navigate the user to the items that they were looking for in a way that was seamless for them to actually find those items. Finally, how the user is engaging with that merchandise that they ultimately discover on the platform. Is it easy for them to engage with the merchandise? What actions do they want to take that make them feel more connected with the merchandise? And what will ultimately get them to come back again and recommend their friends to the platform? Finally, we needed to communicate clearly to the user what's in it for me. That really was a sticking point for our platform because we need to show the user why they should be engaging with the future merchandise. One of the best ways to bring our consumers back is by showing them that they are influencing future trends that are being adopted by the brands. That typically will be the what's in it for me for our users, and that is what typically will drive them back to our site. So this is an example of our sign-up process on PreeLine, and this actually addresses a lot of the UX questions that we are looking into, because when we started off, when a user first comes to our platform, we know that we need to capture certain information about them to make sure that they are going to come back and engage with the platform again. What information do we need about them to make sure that they have the chance to engage with other users, discover the merchandise they're looking for, and ultimately understand that they are a trendsetter and are influencing industry decisions that are being made? So we asked for the general sign-up information with gender, zip code. We would then give them a confirmation, but then we wanted to make it personal. So we actually asked for a profile creation process. And we also said, why don't you connect with other PreeLine trendsetters? So they got a sense of the social aspect of the site. Finally, we allowed them to look up their friends who are available from Facebook and Gmail. So these are all very basic UI wireframes. Again, the site that you see today is going to look very different, but I wanted to give you a sense of that evolution of integrating that UI design into our UX experience and what that discussion and evolution of that experience looked like. So when you're looking to build out your brand's user experience, the first thing you want to do is really to outline your strategy and make sure you understand who your user is and why they will be coming to your site or your platform or why they will be using your product. It's imperative that you understand why they would be coming, because from that, you can then start to list out some of the questions they may be asking as they enter your platform. If they're coming to your platform to shop yoga wear, for example, one of the questions they may ask when they arrive at your site is, where are your yoga pants? And with a good UX, you should be able to answer that question easily and seamlessly so that that user can navigate to the yoga pants very quickly. From there, you build out your wireframes and mocks, and then once those wireframes are built, again, you'll want to build a flowchart or a site map that shows if the user is on the homepage, here are the various places they can click. If a user comes to a yoga athleisure site, here's the path they could take to find the yoga pants. And there most likely will be several paths on your site that they could take to get there. So really flowcharting that out and showing the site map of how the user could take one step to another to get to certain places on the site. And finally, the key is to really test and refine, to continue to test out what you've built in terms of your UX and your UI, and make sure to continue to refine it based on that consumer feedback. So building it out, it's really the for who, it's the for what are they looking for, what are those questions they have, and then how are you solving for a pain point? How do you have a value add? If you're a yoga wear company, are you making it seamless for them to try on the yoga pants? Do you have a subscription service? Are you solving for something that's going to differentiate you from other customers? or other competitors within your market. And really that value add is what's going to help you grow even more. So for testing out your UX, you've built out your UI wireframes, you've integrated them into a functioning site, so you have an effective UX or user experience on that site. Now, how do you test if your user experience is in fact effective in getting your consumers to the right places and keeping them happy about their experience? So the first one is a tree test. So what a tree test does is when you go to your user who you're beta testing with, you would ask them to navigate to a certain page or perform a certain task on your platform. You then just watch as they navigate through your site to perform that task or get to that page and note exactly the path they took to get there. It is surprising how many different paths the user can take on a site that you built when you think that you know every single path. One interesting one that I had never thought about with PreeLine that we noticed when we were doing tree tests was that a lot of users were clicking Control-click to view the product in a full screen in another tab. And that was something that we had never thought about, we had never tested into, and that seemed to be a fairly common interaction with the consumers. And so we realized that within that product detail page, we actually had to add the social button. The second test is a card test. So a card test allows your users to organize the content on your site so you can figure out how to best organize the content in a way that makes it easy for your user to search for what they're looking for. So what you do in a card test is you ask your user to take various components of your site and organize them into specific categories. So again, going back to that yoga wear example, you may ask your users what categories they would use to organize your various items and looks. So they may organize it in pants, tops, and jackets, or they may organize it in streetwear, yoga class wear, etc. So seeing how they organize out that content. Last but not least, the third test that you can perform is a first impression test. And that is very similar to a tree test, but you give them the task and you ask them to navigate somewhere and you note specifically where they click first, because typically that first step they take, navigate to the page, will bring them on those different paths that they may go on. So these are just a couple of tests that you can run to quickly receive some feedback. The guys from Campus Insights, again, are going to go over in much more detail some more usability tests that you can run through with your beta users. But it's a great way of receiving some feedback from your users to improve your UX. So why does UX matter? It's actually really a key in terms of succeeding with your product, because it's the way you continue to keep your users satisfied and coming back. You increase your return rates, that's to your site, not return rates in terms of returning of merchandise. You increase the average time spent on your site, conversion, you increase referrals in terms of people telling their friends to come to your site and interact with it. And I know this is a very wide range, but really it's been said that for every dollar invested in UX, you will see a return of at least $2 to $100. And so it really does matter that if you have a good UX, it will continue to keep your consumer coming back and engaging with that merchandise. So that's about it for me. I'm going to pass this presentation over to the guys at Campus Insights. Again, if you guys have questions, please add them in the comment box and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to quickly pass off mic to Campus Insight guys.
What's up, guys? My name is Riley Soward, and I am one of the co-founders of Campus Insights. Today I'm also joined by Steven, our other co-founder.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Yeah, so just a real quick background on kind of what we do as a company. So we are a team of college students on campuses across the country, and we basically do everything that Julia has just talked about for companies specifically interested in the college demographic. So for example, in an ideal world, we do a project for Snapchat where they would come to us and maybe say we want to test out a certain new feature or test out, any pain points that users might have with Snapchat. And then kind of from there, we would work with them to come up with questions and tasks to give users. And then we would identify a portion of users to test with, and then, actually conduct those interviews and then ultimately deliver an analysis report. So you guys actually, for your homework this week, are going to have basically a mini project that's similar to what we do here at Campus Insights. With that said, we're going to kind of delve into some tips we have learned over our past year as a company. All right, my screen is now sharing, and we're just going to go over to our PowerPoint. So, as I mentioned, we kind of do a entire project which starts with identifying interviewees and ends with that ultimate analysis report. In terms of that kind of step before you actually conduct the interview, once you have the interviewee in the room, it's very important kind of the things you say to the interviewee and what happens leading up to the first question and task you give those interviewees. Kind of the idea here is if you have a interviewee who feels very relaxed and very kind of normal, it's going to be much better than if they're in a situation in which they are very nervous and don't really feel at ease. So the idea there is, as you can see for our first tip, it's joke around with the interviewee. The idea is you're kind of, oh, wait 1 second. You're really trying to put the interviewee at ease, and whether that's talking about their classes or cracking a couple of jokes, you're trying to get them as normal and as natural as possible. The second tip is make it clear that the usability interview is not a test of the interviewee's skill or intelligence. Oftentimes, you are going to be testing a product that has flaws, that has different bugs, and you don't want the interviewee to feel as if the test is really a test of their intelligence or technical ability. As a result, it's important to stress this idea that you're testing not the interviewee, him or herself, but really the product itself, and kind of just reaffirming the idea that this is a new product and it probably is going to have issues with it. And then kind of that third point, you really want to encourage honest and critical thoughts. The rationale here is some people, when they're testing out a new product, might kind of defer to just saying, oh, this is kind of cool, or I like it, but not really being honest. So I think for us, it always helps to establish the idea that, this is a new product, there's going to be things you like and there's going to be things you dislike. And, what's the most valuable to us as a team is you giving us your very honest and critical thoughts. So tell us everything you love, but also tell us everything you hate. And I think by establishing that, you kind of lead people to feel more comfortable being honest about the product, as opposed to, worrying that they're going to offend the team who's creating the product, or worrying that they're going to kind of give feedback that's different than everybody else. All right, so in terms of transitioning into the interview, generally during these interviews, you try to encourage the interviewees to think out loud. The idea here is you're trying to get a kind of a glimpse into what the interviewee is thinking as they go through the product, right? So if you were testing PreeLine, you don't want to just see where they're looking to click on that screen, but ideally you want to hear them say, oh, well, this interface looks kind of confusing, or I'm not sure where their sign up button is, or, oh, I don't like that color. So before you start the interview, we encourage you to kind of explain the concept of thinking aloud and tell them that, you'd like them to voice their thoughts as they go through the website, as if they were kind of just describing to, somebody else in the room what they're currently seeing. In addition to that, at that point, we usually explain the context of the situation. So if you really want to replicate the ideal use case of the app, the best way to do this is present kind of the general situation in which somebody would be using this product, right? For example, for PreeLine, that situation might be somebody sends their friend a link to the fashion site and tells them like, hey, check it out, let me know what you think. Or if we're testing like a tutoring site, the situation you would give the interviewee is, a friend sends you this saying, hey, I know you're struggling with this class. check out this site. I think it can help you. So the idea here is you're trying to replicate that general use case in which any user would be introduced to the product. And then finally, at that point, you go ahead and give the interviewee their first task. So in the case of PreeLine, I think the first task is visit PreeLine.com and create a profile. And from there, you're going to jump into the interview.
Great. So the next transitioning on to the next part of the interview is how we actually ask these questions. It's very important when we're going about through this interview process that we think about the way that we ask these questions in order to eliminate any potential bias that we may induce into the interview itself. So the first part is just starting off easy. And so like Relly mentioned earlier, we want to really put them in a very comfortable environment. And so they're able to reveal those candid insights about the product or the platform or the website that they're reviewing. So by starting off by giving them an easy task, you can allow them to get very comfortable and feel like, hey, this is something that I'm capable of doing. I'm not stressed out. I'm not worried about being tested. And so by doing this, sometimes start easy tasks may be, hey, just describe a couple of apps that you typically use on a normal day basis. This would get them comfortable and into the environment. It's something that they're capable of asking and makes them feel relaxed before the actual interview starts. The second most important thing here is don't ask leading questions. And so oftentimes, especially when we have built the product or we're familiar with the site, we have our own preconceived notions about how we feel the product is and what we like and dislike about the product. And so oftentimes it's easy to sort of say, what do you like about the interface? Do you like this part? Do you like this part? Do you like signing into Facebook, right? Those types of questions, tend to cause the interviewee to go along with what you're saying and kind of end up being more positive or more negative depending on how you're directing them one way or the other. And so instead of asking those questions that push them in one direction, we sort of recommend that you keep them more open-ended. So, how do you feel about the interface? Or if you want to put in both a positive and a negative option, do you like or dislike the interface? Second part, or the third part here is asking follow-up questions. And so this is very key. And so oftentimes the first answer or response that you might get from an interviewee may be very vague. And so if you ask them about the onboarding process, they may say, hey, I just liked it. And so you would follow up with a laddering question, which is, what components did you like about the interface or the onboarding process? They might respond with, I really enjoyed the fact that I could sign in through Facebook. And you can follow up again, okay, why is signing in through Facebook important to you? And they might respond with, well, it allows me to autocomplete my profile when I'm signing into my account, which saves me a lot of time and hassle. So now you have an idea that by allowing your users to sign in through Facebook, they have the ability to save a lot of time and get that information inputted in very easily, as opposed to just having this idea that they like the interface and nothing more. And so by asking these follow-up questions and laddering and really starting off with something that's very vague and getting down to the specific couple of reasons why the user feels the way that they do, it's going to give you a lot more concrete feedback that you can use when making improvements to your site. All right, Riley, next slide. Great. So now the last portion, now that you've kind of conducted your interview, hopefully you're going to have a number of different points of feedback that you can use going forward. And so typically when we do projects for clients, we conduct anywhere between 10 and 20 interviews. And so at the end of the project, we have a lot of feedback that we have to go through and sort and figure out, hey, what is the most valuable thing that we can, present to our clients? And so as much as we would like to do everything that the user sort of recommends or areas of improvements that they found, we really want to focus on what are the 3 to 7 most important tips that can really help our clients make those changes that they need to make. Because oftentimes they're strapped on resources, they have limited development time, and oftentimes it's a short timeline, right? We have to improve the website because we're launching in 3 weeks. We don't have the time to do a comprehensive makeover of the entire platform. And so this means that we really start off by reading through our notes or going back through the video that we've kind of filmed for these interviews, and then start the sorting process. And so by going through the sorting process, we'll start identifying here are some key sections that are really important. And so, for example, one aspect of that category may be the sign-up process. And so you got some feedback that the sign-up process wasn't entirely clear. Some users thought that forms were optional when in reality you had to put something there, and so you're going to want to go back and make sure to clearly note one way or the other whether a form is optional or whether a form is mandatory. You might also get some feedback that said, hey, I'm really interested in signing in through Twitter or Facebook, but I don't have those options available. It's only through email. That's a recommendation or a piece of feedback that I have for you. Another category section could just be the overall interface of the site. And so we mentioned a little bit earlier about trying to keep the onboarding page or other pages on your site, specifically when you're dealing with a call to action, free of clutter. And so you might have people that say, hey, I got distracted because there was too many links all over the place. I wasn't sure where to go. I clicked over here and I clicked over here and I really got lost, and that was frustrating to me. And so by figuring out a way to categorize, you can kind of figure out what are those 3 to 7 key points or key areas of improvement that we can make going forward. And so the third part here is how do we compile and sort of rank or prioritize those different categories that we've identified. And so we oftentimes use 2 sort of different metric systems to evaluate or prioritize pieces of feedback. And so one of them is how many interviewees experience the issue. And so I think for you guys, you're only going to be doing a couple of interviews, but if you're doing 10 or 20 interviews, there's a big difference between 2 interviewees expressing something and 12 interviewees expressing something. And so by kind of ranking how many people felt the same way, you can sort of generate a group consensus and say, well, if most people feel this issue or feel this way, we believe that it's a little bit more statistically significant, and this is a change that we want to make going forward. Sometimes you'll have those rare occasions where only one user pointed out something that's actually really significant or a big change that other users miss, but specifically when it comes to usability testing, oftentimes you'll sort of see those areas where people had consensus and want to make changes. And the second metric that we use to rank and prioritize these pieces of feedback is how strongly the interviewees feel about the issue. And so sometimes, as our example notes, there may be a minor bug that people identify, but it's not really that irritating to them, or it's not really frustrating. And while you may want to address that bug down the road, it doesn't necessarily need to be a high priority for the team, as opposed to a pop-up window that was generated when someone first entered the website that was really distracting and really frustrating to users because they didn't know how to click out of it, or it forced them to put information into the website before they felt trustworthy or felt that they could, trust the site and move on and provide their own information. And so by using those 2 metric systems, how many interviewees experienced the issue and how strongly they felt about the issue, it sort of helps provide an easy mechanism for you to prioritize and rank those pieces of feedback. And so you can make sure that you're taking care of those pieces of feedback that are the most important to the user, as opposed to running around and trying to do everything at once. Sort of summarize how we conduct our analysis. We start off by reading and sorting and figuring out, hey, here's everything that we have from the 5 interviews that we've conducted. Here's the key points that we've identified from each interview. The second point would be to categorize that. Where are some categories where we're seeing some group consensus? Is it in the sign-up section? Is it on the interface design? Is it on our call to action page? Where is that occurring? And then third would be to prioritize those takeaways by using how strongly the interviewees felt about the issue and how many of them expressed that issue to give you a better sense of how important those pieces of feedback are. So I think that pretty much concludes the Campus Insights perspective on usability testing. I think we got a good perspective on the importance of usability testing to begin with, how UI and UX affects your site and your users, and then how you can use usability testing to sort of improve your site or your product to make it easier for your users to navigate. And so I think, like we mentioned earlier, we're happy to be a resource going forward. I think we've distributed our email and contact information, and so whether it's the project that you guys have assigned with the PreeLine certificate, or whether it's other projects that you guys are working on and doing usability testing, please reach out and contact us. We're happy to give feedback. We're happy to answer any other questions that you might have, and thank you so much for having us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. And to the class, we really do encourage you guys to get in touch with the Campus Insight team if you have any questions or if you want to get more involved. So I just want to quickly go over our homework for this week, because it is a little bit more involved than the homework from last week. So this week you actually will have the opportunity to perform your own usability test with the PreeLine platform, which is really cool. So you'll have the opportunity to go ahead and select 5 of your friends who you'd like to perform the usability test with, and then actually go through this step-by-step process in order to collect some insights, and then ultimately write your own conclusion of ways that the site could be improved based on some of the observations you made during those usability tests. So the homework can be found, again, on the Fashion Tech Accelerator site in week 2, and we give you the context up here before actually asking you to submit your form with all of the feedback from your friends. But you want to make sure that when you're setting up this usability test, as the guys from Campus Insight were saying, you need to make sure that either you're following these questions that we've outlined, we try to give you kind of a roadmap as you're going through these, or you're sticking pretty close to them, because you do want to make sure that you're not being leading their questions, and that we are gathering this feedback that can actually be used to produce some really good conclusions. We'll actually be highlighting one of the best conclusions, or the best conclusion of the week 2 homework next week during that call. So we encourage you to spend some time on building out those conclusions and collecting that feedback from your friends to see, to find some ways and uncover some ways that the site UI and the site UX could be improved to address some issues that you may notice as you perform these tests. So that is on the site. Make sure to check that out. And now we'll open it up for questions. We should be good to go. Yep, so if you want to view the questions, drop down on chat. Chris has some fantastic questions. I will chime in on number 1. So, are there any standard rules when building out a website app, such as keeping the shopping cart on the right-hand side? And Chris, if you would like to chime in and unmute yourself for any of these, you feel free to add on to your questions. In terms of standard rules, the first is that make sure that you're asking for information in a logical way. So, for example, you wouldn't ask someone for their credit card information up front before they really know your brand. And so I oftentimes think of it like dating. You have to take it slowly and allow the person to get to know you. So asking for their email too early can be a bit too abrupt. Asking for especially payment information too early can be too abrupt. In terms of coloring on the website from a UI standpoint, typically on a site you'll want to pick one call to action color that's used on all buttons that navigate to something like a cart. So for example, if you have a checkout button that brings you to the checkout cart, that button should be the same color across your platform. So the user should be able to get used to your platform by seeing those same formatting, coloring, and formatting of the page across each platform. The second kind of standard rule when creating a site is that if you are asking for any information in a form way, eliminate as much noise and chatter from the page as possible. So a lot of the best sites, as I was saying, in terms of conversion rates of getting users to sign up, there is not a lot of text, and it typically will say in one short sentence why the user should care to sign up or add in their information on that page. So for example, if they're checking out, typically you'll want them to come to a clean page without any distraction where they can easily fill out that payment information.
If it's okay, here, just build off of that. Something we see a lot with mobile apps is, you obviously want to be able to have them enable push notifications and sometimes enable your location or anything like that. A big error that a lot of companies with apps make is they send you that, they ask for that notification right off the bat without even telling you why you need to enable notifications. So instead, we tend to recommend this idea kind of called priming, which is if you are going to ask them to enable notifications, instead of just pushing them with that prompt, instead you would have something show up on the screen that says, it's important that you enable notifications because of this. And then you have them hit, yes. And once they hit yes, then they get prompted for, to accept, or I guess turn on notifications. But we find that actually increases the chances much more that, your app actually, or people actually will get notifications for your app.
Great. And then, Chris, your second question, with Facebook and Instagram, the other big social media sites have found part of their success with how intuitive it is to use the sites. Has this had an influence on retailers' build of their sites? So I would say yes. I think that luckily people are realizing that simple is better, and intuitive navigation typically works much better. I think what is typically difficult in retail, again, with that card test that we went over in terms of testing out the UX, is figuring out how to intuitively organize all of the content on a retail site. And I think that's something that brands are just starting to get really good at in terms of organizing the content and organizing the search in a way that really allows the user to hone in on the items that they're looking for quickly. So an example of that is, it's not a total retail, but Rent the Runway has a filter feature that is omnipresent. It stays filtered on the site no matter which page you navigate to. And that's really been a huge evolution in the way that the user can search, because they can put in their dress size and their colors that they're looking for and the event they're looking for even, and then every single page they navigate to will continue to hold those features set. So I think that features like that are starting to build out the UX to be a lot better at organizing the content to show what the user is actually looking for. And then, Riley, I don't know if you guys wanted to touch upon the third one, but there's been research on how certain colors, combinations drive you to buying food. Has there been similar research done? And are there certain colors that drive people to buy fashion items, like black, white, versus other color combinations?
No, we actually don't have too much of a background with color, mainly because both Steve and I are colorblind, so generally the we give does not reflect on color.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen I haven't seen much research done on it. I do know that a lot of fashion sites do use a lot of white and black, mainly because, and actually white backgrounds for the actual fashion looks, because it allows the color to be read in an accurate way. Typically, if the background is a different color, the product images, the color of the product in the product image can read a little bit different when it's placed against a different color background.
One thing I will add, though, in terms of just, studies in psychology, is a lot of the research into people's preference based on color just has to do with their own personal experience. And so it's not like, blue is an objectively appealing color to someone, but oftentimes if a lot of blue has been, connotated with happy experiences in their life, it tends to be a color that gives them joy and makes the site more appealing. But it is a very interesting and fascinating topic to look into.
Yeah, and one thing that we actually can do is send along some really interesting sites that address the various emotions that people have tested people feeling when viewing certain colors. A lot of it is it can go either way, but it is very interesting to look into. All right, so do you guys have any other questions? Cool. So thank you so much, you guys, for joining us today. Next week, we'll be looking at the structure of a fashion company. But again, please make sure to submit that homework. In order to get the certificate, you need to submit the homework. And we really look forward to seeing the insights that you guys gather from completing your own usability tests. So thank you so much, and thank you to the Campus Insights team. You guys are really awesome.
Problem, and people can feel free to reach out to us if they have any questions about conducting the interviews. We're happy to give insights.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
No problem.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Bye.